Welcome to the Protecting Your Nest podcast. One of the many reasons I wanted to have a podcast is to, and really not just a podcast, a YouTube channel, a column on the Diet Doctor website, and to work collaboratively with the Society of Metabolic Health Practitioners was to have a platform to share the message that therapeutic carb restriction is the key to achieving metabolic health for so many of us. Just as importantly, to help put to rest the myth, that low carb, keto, or carnivore are not fad diets, but dietary patterns that reverses most of the chronic medical conditions that are responsible for so much unnecessary suffering in society today. Thankfully, there are many soldiers who are helping to spread this message. And today you will meet another one who's just as dedicated to this cause. Today's guest is Dr. Vic Basmadjian. Vic is a Armenian Canadian who has successfully lost over 100 pounds using keto and intermittent fasting. This approach has resulted in the reversal of many of his so-called chronic medical conditions, including hypertension, acid reflux, and severe sleep apnea. And, I wanted to bring him along so that he can, share his passion for helping others through education and coaching. And today, I hope he will inspire and coach us as he shares his healing message. With that, Vic, I welcome you to the Protecting Your Nest podcast.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Hampton. It's a real honor and it's my privilege to be here. And I really look forward to having a constructive conversation. And like you mentioned, hopefully we can inspire some people.
Yeah, well, that's what this work is all about. And for anybody listening who has taken this journey, who is on this journey, don't be afraid to share your experiences. Don't be afraid to coach and inspire somebody, because we really need all of us helping those who need that help. And I feel privileged. I mean, even as I think about my last clinic day, which was just yesterday, I get chills when I hear my patients celebrate their successes, or they're reducing their medicines, or they're some rash that they never could get rid of. I mean, I had a patient that, was having problems with skin tags, and they just start falling off. I mean, it's just crazy things that you're not even kind of focused on that happens with this approach. So I'm really excited. So let's have a conversation. Many people who follow me on social media or with this podcast, they understood that my past was I was a vegetarian for 8 years or so. And I've probably been doing low carb for probably about 9 now. And so it's been an interesting journey. And I think I was vegetarian because there was this fear in our society of saturated fat and what it could do in terms of increasing our risk for heart disease. So when you make that transition and you're known as a vegetarian doctor, people they look at you with a confused face. They're like, "What is going on with Dr. Hampton? I thought you were a vegetarian," and lo and behold, you transition to a low carb doc. So when you made your transition from your previous way of eating to one where you focused on keto, what was that like? Well, how did your family react to that?
Well, the family's reaction was at first probably one of the most common reactions you hear from most people who have absolutely no knowledge on the ketogenic lifestyle or the low carbohydrate uh, or unfortunately the way keto is being perceived on social media with the exaggeration of how much fats are being used, and which is not the way I generally do keto. But everybody's perception is, even up till today, they say it's like, well, it can't be healthy for you, all that fat and what have you. And well, I said, well, that's not what it's about. It's not about all that
Right.
fat. It's not about, as I've tweeted so many times, keto is not a all you can eat fat buffet, So there was concern at the beginning, my mom in particular, hearing all her life that, too many eggs are no good for you, and cholesterol, and what's going to happen to your cholesterol. And, but they accepted it, and they said that what they couldn't uh, deny was there was being progress. They saw the progress, they saw the weight loss, they saw the change in me, how much better I feel, how much energetic I am. And uh, fortunately, even my blood panels, when I was going to see my doctor with no issues, and me telling them and explaining to them, well, listen, you know what? Um, you have to understand that it's the sugar and the carbohydrates that are doing the damage, and they've been demonizing the fat all these years. So it's a hard sell. Even up till today, it's people. It's the first thing. All that fat, all that. Well, I go, no, the person eating the standard American diet, as I tell them, is probably eating more fat than I do. So
Mm.
it's just that it's not visible to them. They don't see it in the processed junk that they're eating and the content. They seem to visualize what we eat, and it's a tough sell. But my family supported me. Um, they still now they fully understand. 5 years after the fact, they fully understand. They've embarked on it in some. I can't say they're ketogenic, but the kids included, my wife included, my mom included. You know what? And that's okay. It doesn't have to be an all or nothing, right? It's at least if they improve by 50%, it's a gain, it's a win. So that's what the household looks like.
Yeah, and it's always interesting how people perceive things. Thankfully, I had the advantage of being a clinician who always talked about wellness and nutrition. So I laugh when I think about, even my own wife and kids, and they were like, "So are you sure we can eat all of this fat?" When we were literally, near vegan prior to that, and I had to, pull out the data almost to even convince them. But even as I was driving home yesterday, I was listening to the audio of a influencer on YouTube, and I absolutely enjoy and appreciate all the influencers who are really sharing the message that carb restriction is the way to go. But in that video, she did call out the importance of increasing the fat. And I just want to re-emphasize what you just said, which is it's really not about the fat. I do not count macros, and that would be the fat, protein, or carbs ever. I don't encourage patients to do that. There's nothing wrong with it. I have some people who are very particular, analytical, but it is my opinion that if you do a properly formulated low carb diet, keto diet, what you're doing is reducing carbs, because ultimately, if you get your carbs under 50 grams a day, and for some people it needs to be 20. 20 is and I would argue, like Dr. Eric Westman is that I focus more on um, total carbs. However, everybody's different, and some people do just fine with net carbs. So I think you have to look at your own individual situation. But at the end of the day, if you reduce the carbs, your body will put you into ketosis by using body fat to do that, as opposed to exogenous ketones that come from your diet. So I really appreciate that. And again, there's nuance to it. There's no black and white to it. It's just that if you're trying to achieve your goal and you want to do it with a high level of success, you want to know these nuances so that when you struggle, when you have when you have stalls, you'll understand why. So let's go to another thing that comes to mind when I think about you. And I know it's been years. You just mentioned your family. And when you were a little guy, there are, many things that I could imagine that would go through your brain or you would experience if you're not at the ideal body weight. So I guess the first question is, have you struggled with obesity since your childhood years? And if not, just tell me a little bit about what it's like mentally to be in a body that's bigger than it should be. What kind of emotional traumas did you experience back then?
Yeah, it's still you get emotional up till today. It's when you think back on it, it's something that never leaves you, and it's scars that are there, and it's been since childhood. It's been since childhood. I mean, I was well, we used to call it, or I used to call it, or people still call it. No, but everybody's scared to use the word obese, but that's what it was. It's like call it overweight, but no, it wasn't overweight. It was obese, and I was probably obese at the age of 8, 9,
Mm,
and yeah, for sure that carries a lot of mental distress. There was a lot of, kids can be, as we all know, very mean. There was a lot of fat shaming in school, and kids laughing at you. And when you're in a gym class and you're always running behind at the end throughout the whole class, and they know that Vic is going to be the last one in line, or when they're picking teams, they don't want to pick you because they know that you're too slow, or you're not going to help to the team for playing basketball or whatever sport or game it may be. So yeah, it's definitely, it causes a lot of mental challenges. I was fortunate enough that I skated around it. I never had real issues to say that it didn't help me from going through my daily function and what have you. Uh, but deep down inside, it would hurt a lot of times, even when in your teenage years. At every level, at every age, it's become, you know, uh, you go on vacation, you go on the beach, you're let's call it what it is. You're embarrassed to take your top off because people are staring at you. People are laughing. They're making comments. It's not a pleasant thing. Uh, I was very, I was back then, and I still am. I'm in general a strong character. I'm a people's person, and I was able to avoid a lot of that by just like people would, you sell them your character over your physical presence, and so they
mhm.
accept you, and you're okay. And but it's a problem. It's a challenge. It leaves, and this is my today, what is part of my passion and what drives me. I get emotional talking about it. I don't want any kid to have to go through that. And there's no reason that anybody should. Back then, we didn't know. There was no information. Today, all the information is there. It's all there. We can make changes. Parents should be, educating themselves more, what they're feeding their kids, how they're doing. They know better now. I can't blame my parents for what they were feeding me. There was absolutely no knowledge, but the knowledge is there today. And no kid should have to go through childhood shame of obesity. No teenager or no adult. Nobody should have to be shamed. And this is what my passion is about, to spread the word so that nobody has to go through this.
And I totally agree. And I am so thankful that you feel so much when you talk about it, because if you're still feeling that way this many years later, I can only imagine the trauma of what you felt when you were younger. And I remember, I was recently on my Amazon page with my Fix Your Diet, Fix Your Diabetes. And I remember recording a video with one of my patients. And the title of that video is 100, ironically, 100 pounds lost using Fix Your Diet principles. I think that's ironic since you had a similar number. And, but I think that's a great video to watch because in that video, she shares the story of her being new to school at a new school. And she had to climb the stairs to get to her first class. There was a young man who was with her, and so she was trying to climb the stairs to keep up with him. She knew while she was doing that there was going to be a problem, and there was. So when she got up to the classroom, she walks in, new student, and there's silence except for one noise, and that noise is hearing her breathe, trying to catch her breath, and it's traumatized her, and that's how she started her first day in class. And again, when you're at that age, kids don't always have empathy, but unfortunately, adults don't always have empathy as well. So what we're trying to do is hear stories like that, your story, her story, and anybody else. And then hopefully we can help people understand that the disease caused obesity is something we have to treat as a disease, and we help people, but you can't help them with pills and surgeries only. You use those things when appropriate, but it's really not necessary for most people. I have a handful of people in my practice who end up needing surgery or medicine. So I really want to emphasize that as well. So thank you for sharing that. And I think as importantly, we need to share the impact this dietary change has had on you as it's, reversed what you were told were chronic, progressive medical conditions. So let's talk a little bit about your journey in terms of what types of health conditions you suffered from and how you were able to put those conditions into remission.
Well, the most severe conditions was, on the metabolic side of the scale was, hypertension. For 30 years, I was on hypertension medication as of the age of 20, as early as the age of 25, and so I was on it for 30 years because my journey started at 55. And for 30 years, I had the same doctor. Not once was a solution ever discussed. Not once was there, okay, what can we do to reduce your blood pressure and somehow get you off medication? And not once. And you'd go in and out, 5-minute check, a 10-minute check, and checks your blood pressure. Yeah, it's still up there. Watch your salt, the typical. Watch your salt. Watch what. Move more, eat less. And that's all it was. There was never a solution. Okay. What do I eat? What do I? None of that. So and he actually would confirm that you'll never get off your medication. It's a chronic. Because it runs in the family. Your father has it. Your mother has it, and you learn what you know now. And these conditions don't exist, and it's not in your genetics. I mean, it can be in some cases. We know that. Okay, but in most cases, it's all dietary inflicted, and that's certainly the case in my family. And you inherit the same eating habits, and so that's going to take you down that road. So that's one of them. And then much later, at the age of 50, I was diagnosed with severe sleep apnea. And I, it had gotten so bad. Well, at the time, I didn't know I had sleep apnea, and I couldn't get through by 1 in the afternoon, 2 in the afternoon. I just didn't have any energy left. I was done, and I just couldn't get through the day. And then somebody mentioned to me that you might want to go check yourself out. Maybe you have sleep apnea. And, make a long story short, sure enough, I went for a sleep study and was diagnosed with severe sleep apnea. I was recorded as stopping breathing 45 on the average 45 times an hour. For sometimes for short and other times at longer hauls, anywhere from 5 seconds to as long as 35, 40 seconds. So CPAP therapy, went on the machine, and 5 years of CPAP machine. Other condition was constant acid reflux, GERD, very bad battles of it. Just about any time of the day, actually, would be the horrific bouts would be at night while you were sleeping, but I'd get it even during the day. These are the three that thankfully I have escaped. Thankfully, I'm no longer on blood pressure medication. I no longer use CPAP therapy. I did go through another sleep study confirming that I do not need CPAP therapy. So the scar runs so deep that I still once in a while throw on the blood pressure cuff because I can't believe I'm off my medication, right? So there's a panic there. Is my blood pressure going to go back up? And thankfully it's all under control. I can't remember when's the last time I had acid reflux. It just doesn't happen anymore. And another one of we'll call it, compared to those, a lighter condition. I had very bad eczema. Now, I know it's a little bit of a gray zone. People say, well, that's not necessarily going to cure eczema and what have you. But I can say for myself, speaking for myself, I stopped. I would use cortisone on a regular basis to on my fingers to stop the scratching and itching, and for years and years and years, and that's all gone. And I got smooth hands, no eczema, no nothing. It's all my elbows, rough elbows, and the skin is so much better. It's no matter what you say, it's life changing, and I'm fortunate and blessed.
Yeah, I had a patient whose skin was so impacted by eczema that it was like he was a crocodile. It was just rough. And I'll tell you, since I do have my doctor training and my anecdotal experience, I see tons of patients asthma get better, tons of patients allergies get better, and of course the eczema is in that same bucket, get better. And many find that they don't use their inhaler as much or their antihistamines as much, and of course their topical steroids as much, if at all. So anecdotal, whatever. I tell you, it's incredible. I've never seen a patient who was on CPAP get better because they were on CPAP. Yeah, of course, they were able to maintain manage their symptoms and sleep better. But in terms of getting off of CPAP, CPAP won't help you get off of CPAP. It's the weight loss for most people and the inflammation that goes away. And I think about my patients like Gwen Butler, who was on a previous episode, and her on insulin for 11 years, and she gets off insulin within a month, a month and a half. And I think about your 30 years of anti-hypertensive medicines. And we love having medicines available to us to help us when we need them. But they should be bridge therapy. They should be things you take temporarily to protect you from a stroke, etc., until you have figured out this lifestyle. And do not blame your doctor for being in a system, rather it's in the US or Canada, that doesn't train doctors how to heal you. Don't blame your doctor for being in a system that is focused on managing disease and suppressing symptoms. But what's important is that you contribute to your doctor's education. You say to your doctor, I heard there was something called the Society of Metabolic Health Practitioners. And I heard that with therapeutic carb restriction, uh, you can help me get off of medicine safely. So you go to the Society of Metabolic Health Practitioners website, you print the uh, therapeutic carb restriction guidelines, you know, that was primarily written by Adele Height, and you share that with your doctor. There's no, and then if you have resistance, then you go to that same website and you find a doctor who understands that lifestyle is the key. So I just think that we have to work as soldiers, as I mentioned in the intro, all together to help patients find another way. When you think about the diets that we're kind of advocating for, low carb, keto, carnivore, there's so many other dietary options out there. And I'm sure, as someone who's struggled with weight issues since the age of 8, you've probably tried many of them. So my question is, what have you tried, and you landed on keto? Why do you think keto has worked better for you compared to those other dietary patterns?
Yeah, for sure. I tried so many different kinds throughout my life, especially starting through my teenage years, and going back to those who are to the older audience that are aware of. There was the Scarsdale medical diet. I tried that several times, and I'd have success. The weight would come off, but I just couldn't sustain. It would come back. Weight Watchers was another one. Repeat offender many times doing Weight Watchers, and you you realize you only realize, knowing what I know now, is that all that Weight Watchers was a calorie in, calorie out system disguised in a point system. That's all it is. So they're not changing your eating habits. They're just telling you, eat whatever, excuse the expression, eat whatever the hell you want to eat, and as long as you don't surpass your points, right? So
Hmm.
not addressing the proper
And
nutrition that that would work. uh, many other diets, the cookie diet, the fad diets, the soup diets, and crazy 6-day diets, and all these things that were, oddly enough, they call keto or low carb a fad diet, and it's anything but. It's all those that were the fads. It's all those that didn't work, at least for myself, and continuously what I see up till today. In a nutshell, why I think they didn't work and why this works, and is because none of the ones that I mentioned to you earlier uh, addressed satiety, hunger. None of them addressed changing eating habits. None of them addressed, well, what's going on with your stress level, with your sleep. So there's so many moving parts that we know today that have to contribute, and it's an overall understanding to have long-term success. All these moving parts have to be in place. Uh, Even though 5 years later that I'm in a maintenance mode, at times, if I'm at more stressful times, I'll still be getting triggered to eat more and what have you. But I'm educated now. I know how to fight that. I know what's happening. So uh, there was no education with the other diets. There was no principle. There was no addressing hunger, and I think that's the biggest thing. And if you're hungry, you're gonna have cravings. You're gonna go off board, and if you don't understand what's driving your hunger, uh, you're just going to continue having it. People just don't relate to a calorie is not a calorie. A certain food is going to keep you satiated for hours on end, whereas the other one is going to be even more calories than the other one, and you'll be starving in about 2 hours. So those were the core principles and differences of being educated and addressing satiety in particular.
I agree. I know Dr. Tro speaks about hunger often, and I think we both follow Dr. Tro. Um, Hunger is huge, and obviously the other advantage of this dietary approach is that it's good, delicious food, and you don't have to suffer, and you can actually still eat some of the foods that you've enjoyed. And I don't I haven't not looked at the Weight Watchers website, and I do want to say that there have been people who have had success with Weight Watchers. I struggle with uh, a couple of things. I think the biggest thing I struggle with Weight Watchers is this idea that you fruit don't have fresh fruit don't have any points. Now, I just struggle with that. And by the way, non-starchy vegetables don't have any points. Everything is going to impact you metabolically. And if a banana with 28 carbs divided by 4 is 7 teaspoons of sugar, that should have some value in terms of what you're counting. You can't just say that's free. There's no free lunch with any food you eat. And to call nature's candy, which is fruit, something that you don't have to count. I just think that's going to put you. In fact, some people, because of the sweetness of a pineapple, for example, it's almost like it's a trigger food. I mean, because it's so sweet. So that those things have to be counted. And yes, we prefer non-starchy vegetables and greens and collards and cauliflower and broccoli. Those things absolutely are perfectly suited for a low carb or keto diet. But to say they don't have any points is a mistake. If you eat a ton of that stuff, you're still gonna have an issue. So I just think that that type of approach is really setting you up for failure. So thank you for giving us a little perspective about that as well. Um, as thankfully in some ways the keto movement is in full force, and it gives you many options. And when I talk to patients, I really focus on whole foods as much as possible, and then ask them to use keto products as their safe haven. When you're coaching your clients, how do you reconcile the whole foods conversation with the keto products conversation? How do you approach that?
Uh, it's like we say, it's not a one size fits all. We need to assess and we need to see uh, each person and um, their level of addiction, which is a huge part of it, um, and how much do we really need to incorporate uh, the so-called keto replacement foods. As a general rule, I like to start the majority of everybody uh, by abstaining. Okay, uh, going whole foods. No packaged stuff. But having said that, I'm a big believer that I would rather somebody embark in something packaged to get them by and use it as a crutch, and instead of them completely falling off and going on the wayside, use it as a tool. If I'm going to keep it, not getting too lengthy, I think these replacement foods are totally necessary to be used as tools, to be used as a bridge to help somebody get by. They certainly should not be staples.
Mm-hmm.
I go to Costco sometimes and I see people, their carts are overflowing with all these packaged keto goods. And this is not my perception of keto. Okay. Um, and now some of the products very few actually have desirable these. desirable ingredients. A lot of them are, some of them are so bad that you're probably better off eating the actual, bad version of it. So, when they start pumping in maltodextrin and stuff like that, and they're
Mm-hmm.
calling it
Mm-hmm.
keto. Unfortunately, there's no board governing these things, so they're pounding all kinds of stuff. Or they're taking down the they're calling it low carb. They're pumping up they're subtracting the sugar alcohols and the fibers or what have you, making it look attractive. And so people are just overeating on the net carbs, and then they say, well, it's not working, keto doesn't work. So again,
Mm-hmm.
if they're going to be used as a tool, as a crutch to help somebody get by, um, absolutely, there's a place for them. But I teach all my clients that this is not reality. This is not
Mm-hmm.
the way we want to change our eating habits. It's just to help us get by. That's all it is. And use it as a tool, and don't make it your lifestyle. Definitely stick to whole foods. That's the way to go.
Perfect. I One of my favorite foods, I think, is one of your favorites, which is pizza. And and just thinking about pizza, I may even make it this weekend, inspired by you. And in the past, I've had to, what I typically have done is use cauliflower rice, cheese, and eggs. And I've even made a video about this on YouTube. And so now, thankfully, the grocer started putting cauliflower rice in the grocery store. So now I don't have to shred the cauliflower. So that was one time saver. But even what's even nicer is to have a way to have a crust that's prepared for me. Rather, it's already just a crust you buy. Unfortunately, most of the crusts in the store, they don't really minimize the ingredients properly. So you end up with something that still looks, when you look at the carbs, it's a pretty high number. So but thankfully, I know that even yourself was inspired to help us with that and come up with a pizza crust product that is easier to kind of put together. So I guess my question for you is, first of all, where did this pizza passion come from? And I will say this first. I'm allergic to tree nuts. So although coconuts are grown, also grown on trees, I can tolerate coconuts. So I was so impressed and happy to see coconut because I can't do the almond flour. So thankfully that's true. So talk a little bit about what led to you being passionate about helping us have a product to make our pizza crust, because clearly we both have a similar passion.
Yeah, it's where that stems from is, and I'll on this subject of replacement foods and how I had my success, and just by saying that, like I said, it shouldn't be the staple; it should be the aid. Had it not been for these replacement options, I honestly do not think I would have gotten to where I am today. So at the beginning, especially when I was just starting, I did my own research and what have you, and uh, pizza had to be replaced. I just could not eliminate it. Okay, it's like pizza and bread. Okay, it's like I can stay off the sweet stuff and whatever, but my weak spot is the carbs, the carby doughs. Okay, so. Honestly, my solution was I found as on Diet Doctor actually at the time, there was a recipe for fathead pizza, uh, which was made with like you mentioned, almond flour, and so this is what I got by at the beginning of my journey. Was every second week or so I'd indulge in this type of a fathead dough uh, crust and pizza. So I wasn't deprived of it. And then there was at the time also Maria Emmerich's bread on the Diet Doctor site. And so I embarked in that, and I would help if I got a bread craving, I'd use that. All this to say, needless to say, when you have such a love for pizza, you want to always perfect it and get that closer. I use cauliflower and what have you for a lot of replacements. I think it's great for some stuff, for a lot of stuff. But when I have my pizza, I want the closer thing to a real pizza. So I started playing with it. Inspired by Dr. Tro's wife Rosette, who has her products of Rosette's mix of dough mix and what have you, and so I was inspired by that, and so I came up playing around a lot and came up with my mix, and it's nut free. Well, again, like you said, it's coconut flour based instead of being almond flour based. Very clean ingredients. My goal was to bring something to the market that has complete clean ingredients. None of these stuff that you find on the stuff that I wouldn't eat. So I don't want to be a hypocritical and say, well, this is no good for you, and then put out a product on the market that has all that stuff in it. So uh, basically, my product is coconut flour, straightforward. It's whey protein isolate, baking powder, xanthan gum, and that's it. That's all. So there's none of these crazy ingredients that you can't pronounce. Um, it's actually, if we're going to look at it on how dense it is, it's a lot lighter because it's with the coconut flour. Comes together real well. It doesn't require as much cheese as their traditional fatheads, even though it's still a fathead concept. And it helps a lot of people. And you can make pizza with it. You can make bagels with it. You can make pierogies with it. You can make all kinds of calzones. It's very workable, and it's an option that I proud to say is out there and hope and helps people get by their cravings.
Well, thank you for making that. I actually discovered it as I was researching you, so I just ordered it, so I haven't had a chance. I can't give my review yet, but I absolutely appreciate that that's available because, again, we're busy people, and I need to be in a position where I can stay busy, have the things I enjoy periodically. So I'm glad that you took the time to figure that out. So thank you so much for that. I do want to touch on this idea of the pandemic. Many people have gained weight during the pandemic because they didn't have your pizza crust available, and I am curious, how did you manage to stay on target during a worldwide pandemic?
It all comes back to, um, and you mentioned Dr. Tro earlier. You guys, I know, are very close colleagues and work closely together. And uh, Dr. Tro to me is somebody that took me, I like to call him my mentor. He took me to the
Hmm.
next level when I discovered him on social media. And one thing that I learned from him, amongst a lot of things that I learned from him, is his saying that he uses, if you're going to binge low carb to live to fight another day.
Hmm.
So this is how I got through the pandemic. I was
Mm.
stressed as much as the next person. I was triggered as much as the next person, but I was using low carb replacement options that aren't going to make you uh, put on all that weight. Uh, and they're satiating, and you don't have to overeat them. And so you address not being deprived with it, and you're certainly eating more than you usually do. But this is again the tools that are required of these replacement meals. If anybody would go on my Instagram account, I like to show all these options that are created, and a lot of them are not packaged goods. They are real whole foods, but you just
Hmm.
put your favorite foods together in a low carb way, and this is how I survive, and this is how I maintain my weight. I'm not deprived when I feel like having something. That's generally not keto friendly or thing. You come up with the keto version and the healthier version, and it takes a little bit of work, but you got to do what you got to do to stay on track.
That's cool. And another thing that I've learned is that in order to maintain weight loss, exercise is important. But it's hard, particularly if a person has struggled with their weight to exercise. So I know we haven't talked much about that so far, but I'm curious for you, where, when did exercise become a part of your journey? When did you kind of find time to do that? Because so many people, they want to get to that, but they struggle. So what have you done to incorporate that into your life?
Definitely, the exercise spectrum is like you said, it's a struggle to incorporate into personally, as speaking for myself, into my life. Um, I can honestly tell you, when I started my journey, exercise was just about non-existent. Uh, I can say I lost. I didn't do any form of exercise until I was down about uh, 50, 60 pounds. And that was done without any exercise at all. And truth be told, even after that, when I started, if you know, it wasn't really much more than going on brisk walks. So I can, being completely transparent, I didn't have a heavy exercise regimen. It's after my attained goal that started, again, hearing more and more throughout the community the importance of exercise and to maintain our muscle mass and for our longevity and mental the mental help that it gives us, and so important in so many factors that I started incorporating more exercise. Being completely transparent again, you know what, I can't say I'm the ideal uh, committed exercise person. I go on binges. Let's say I'm doing good for a real while, and then for whatever reason it stops, and I stop exercising, and then but I'll always do at least a minimum movement of walking and going, not nothing anything heavy, but doing a good walk, doing in the summer, weather permitting, going on a bike ride and stuff like this. Now, moving forward to this year, I have put a challenge to myself that this way, and I've kept myself accountable in the community to make sure that I do stay on track. Um, I want to run a 5K this year. So, for the first time in my life, I want to put that goal for myself, and I want to be able to run a 5K. I'm not looking to break records. I just want to be able to finish it, and it's a goal I have. And yeah, and keep exercising and try to stay on track as much as I can. That always stay engaged in exercise for maintaining and body composition. Yes, for sure, it's very important.
Nice. Agreed. Thankfully, most of my patients definitely make exercise part two of their journey. But again, I use it to help them maintain weight loss. But I do think that true metabolic health requires that you have muscle and that you move your body. So definitely encourage anybody out there checking out this episode to, eventually make exercise a part of what you do. I also encourage people to be cautious, make their home safe in terms of things that can trigger them. So, and there's so many foods that trigger. For me, literally, I have to be careful with seeds and nuts. It's hard to not grab nuts and seeds whenever I can't eat like, peanuts, for example, and sunflower seeds. And it's hard to like stop once you get started. So, are there other foods that are in that category for you, trigger food? And I guess what advice would you give those who are listening to, be cautious about those trigger foods?
Uh, Absolutely agreed. There are certain foods that we call, especially the so-called, and they are keto-friendly foods.
Hmm.
Nuts being one of them. Cheese, nuts. Um, they're for sure it's keto-friendly, right? But they're not very friendly for weight loss. So uh, depending on where you are in your journey, is you probably is how you want to incorporate those two things in particular. Is for myself, nuts is my is my weak point, and I generally try to keep them out of the house in general. When I feel
Hmm.
like it, I'll get some, I'll have some. But if I have a 3 pound Costco bag in the house at all times, it's 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 trouble because I don't have an off switch for it. It's like I'm going to keep
Hmm.
going, and it triggers me to have more and more and more. I don't know how to have one handful and stop. So
Hmm.
cheese is the same way. Um, uh, as we speak now, because I'm in maintenance, I allow myself to have them more freely. But when I do feel I'm getting a little bit out of control, and at times we feel that we see a little bit of fat creep happening, uh, I get them, I go back to turning the switch off for a while. So bring it in and out, and depending on where you are in your journey, at the beginning when there's a lot of weight loss to be had, it's more forgiving that you can have more. But then when you're getting towards the end, when you only have, let's say, 10 pounds to lose, 15 pounds to lose, in general, nuts and cheese are not going to be your friends on the weight loss side of things.
Yeah, well, Vic and Tony have peace in common, and we have nuts. Although for me, it's peanuts in common. I just think that those are things that people just have to be honest about as they work to walk towards their ideal state. So that is absolutely true, and that's why I wanted to bring that to the conversation. I also want to, celebrate all the people who have helped me on my journey. And believe it or not, the doctor learns from his patients. I learn from my colleagues like Dr. Tro and others. And I learn from the many resources online, whether it's the Nutrition Network, Society of Metabolic Health Practitioners, Lowcarb USA, and so many others. But the most important thing I've gotten from this community is, a hug, acceptance. You're not an outlier. We hear you, we see you, and the low carb community has really made my journey as I try to educate and teach much easier. So I'm wondering for you, what has the low carb community meant to you personally?
I'm pausing because it gets me emotional. This community is gold, is pure gold. Um, these past 2 years, I can honestly tell you, this pandemic, it's probably helped me. Like, we're not even talking about weight loss now. We're talking about just getting by this pandemic and your mental state and what have you. I, you know what, this community has helped me get by because it's given me people to connect with. Even we may not be face to face, but you know, you're 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 engaging with good people, with honest people, with people um, who are on the same page with you, willing to help, willing to, they're always. It's incredible. It's a family. It's kind of weird to explain the connection you have with people that with the majority that you've never actually met in life face to face,
Right.
but they're there.
They're there for you. You're there for them. Everybody's supporting each other. And, I look forward to um, attending, hopefully one day, a low carb USA event to hook up with a lot of these people, whether it's people like myself or doctors like yourself. So many doctors that I have the greatest admiration for what you guys do, and uh, there's so many of you that I respect and take my hat off to of your what you contribute and how you help us. And so, yeah, it's the community is unbelievable. I mean, if you use it in a positive way, and especially on Twitter, it can get ugly at times because you get people who are there for the wrong reasons. But if you stay within the positive crowd, with the people who are there, who are always supporting you, uh, I went through surgery. I had an accident this year, and I injured my elbow, my shoulder, and incredible amount of people sending me direct messages of how you're doing, how you feel, and supporting you. And it's a family. It's one big family. It's the people that who are everybody's the soldiers like myself, and then the doctors like yourself, and all the other doctors that are in this community that are doing amazing work. I it has a big place in my heart. I really the community is huge. I don't think I'd be where I am today without this community.
Yeah, I totally agree. And again, I periodically feel that emotion, particularly at clinic when I have somebody in front of me who has made these incredible leaps and they're doing so well. And they just were able to hear this message and were able to act on it. I never blame anybody who struggles because we have processed food addictions, we have relationship issues. In fact, if we were to think about the nest and rope, which is the next question for you, you know, am I struggling because we have nutrition, we have exercise, less stress, more sleep? Am I struggling because I'm not sleeping well? Am I struggling because my job is so stressful? Am I struggling because the T is about I never recover from trauma? I never recover from trauma. Rather, it's the micro trauma of day to day life or some dramatic thing that happened. Am I being fed negative things in terms of how I think as opposed to positive? With the rope, am I in relationships where I struggle because my marriage is not healthy right now? My relationship with my kids is not healthy right now. Am I just ill because I haven't figured out how to protect myself from organisms? Do I live in an environment where there's so many pollutants, noise pollution, air pollution, toxic relationships pollution? And my emotions unstable? Do I have life experiences that won't allow me to change? I just can't change because that's part of my culture. I think about all of those things, and I think about all the great things that this community helps us to get through. So as I, kind of, ask you the question about where you're going to focus for your nest and rope, for the next year, I just want to remind people that you have to think about all of these things and you have to have support to help you deal with all of these things, because if you just do low carb and that's it, and you don't deal with these other things, you may still find that you are not reaching your health related goals. So Vic, as we kind of wrap up, as you think about your next year, and I've so enjoyed this conversation, where do you think you're going to give additional attention as it relates to that nest and rope acronym?
Uh, I like to think that I'm in my journey, which is I think is a never-ending journey. We're always learning. We always have more to learn. Um, my goal is to I I think nutritionally I'm pretty stable. I'm happy where I am. I like where I am. Um, I know I you know I always have more to learn, but nutritionally speaking, I got a pretty good handle on it. Where I want to increase my knowledge is more, let's say, if we want to get more technical side of it, the more medical side of it, the more understanding, more the effects of metabolic issues and metabolic health, and how, going down. I'm a I'm an avid reader, so going down different rabbit holes of, I've recently gone down pretty uh, interestingly the addiction rabbit hole of how much of a role it plays, addiction. Uh, Starting to read more and more about, the effects and what we can do, cancer, on the cancer side of it, reading books about that. And I'm not looking out to become surely not. I'm not going to become a physician or a doctor, but it's for my personal knowledge. And I think the more I know about it, the more it's a passion. I want to learn these things. And moving forward on the year, I just want to keep spreading the message as much as I can. I want to help. At this stage, it's about helping other people. I've had the good fortune of the people who helped me get to where I am. I think it's time to pay forward and help as many people as I can and get the word out. And that's my goal. And I sometimes, I mean, it's in a nice way, I get jealous of you guys in the States. It's kind of lonely in Canada. It's not. We don't have the kind of, with the amount of doctors like yourselves. We don't have the Dr. Hamptons, the Dr. Trolls, the Dr. Lenskises, the the Dr. Philip Ovadias. So I would love to have the benefit of, if I do have a client that says, well, my doctor said, you know, shot down keto or shot down low carb, I'd love to say, well, go see Dr. Hampton. Or my cardiologist told me that, I shouldn't be embarking on a ketogenic diet. Well, go speak to Dr. Ovadia or, Dr. Cho. So we have a lack of that here. We do have a few doctors. We have Dr. Evelyn Boudriarois. We have a few others. Lately, I'm excited. There's somebody from my community, a young lady that she just actually got board certified with OBAM. So she's an ambassador. Talene, shout out to Talene, my friend. We need more doctors here. We need more doctors to get into the game to help people in general. So I know that you guys are always ready and willing to help on all spectrums, and help you guys spread the word as much as I can. That's the schedule. That's the plan. That's the focus.
Nice. And in my role with the Society of Metabolic Health Practitioners, as I work in partnership with Doug Reynolds and, of course, his lovely partner in crime, Pam Devine, I will share this message. If they don't hear this podcast, I will make sure they hear, because the outreach committee, part of the goal is to reach out to get more people not only understanding this approach to healing from metabolic dysfunction, but also to train clinicians to get certified. It doesn't take much to be certified, to learn these principles, and then to apply them in your practice. So the memo will be out, and I appreciate you helping us to spread the word. I think us talking today is helping you fulfill that mission of outreach. Some people will hear this episode on YouTube or in their podcast app, and you will inspire somebody. So I really appreciate you making some time to chat with me today. I'm so happy we found each other on Twitter, and are going to continue to follow each other's work. And I guess we should wrap up by you telling the audience, first of all, how do we get the pizza dough, and where else are you on social media so people can follow the things that you put out there?
I'd like to thank you for having me on. It's been a absolute privilege, and I thank you for all you do. I know you do a lot of work out there for this community, so I thank you from the bottom of my heart. I can be reached at on Twitter. The handle is Keto Coach Vic. I have the same handle on Instagram. It's Keto Coach Vic. You can see a lot of. I do a lot of posting on my food and what I do as far as options are concerned. If anybody has questions, I'll try to answer as many questions as I can. My mix is unfortunately only shipping in Canada for the present time. It's all a matter of really logistics. It's kind of hard, the shipping and what have you, but you never know what the future brings. But I'll give a shout out if you want the product of the similar product and actually the original, because I was inspired by her, rosettesmix.com. You have all these replacements that there's pizza, and she has the dessert mixes and all that. So check her out in the States, and that's about it. And I really appreciate the opportunity to be on the show. It's very humbling.
Well, thank you. And again, we're all out here doing this work. So again, you inspire me, and that's why I wanted you to be on the show. And I'm thankful and happy that you joined me. So thanks again for being here, my friend. Yeah.
Thank you.
So thank you. So guys, hearing stories of healing like Vic's really helps us fulfill our goal of protecting the T in the NEST acronym, which focuses on how we think. How we think is impacted by our life experiences, which is why I also have an E for life experiences in the ROPE acronym. My hope is that as we experience the life experiences of others, those experiences help define who we are becoming. So the question is, what are we becoming? My hope is that with each episode, we are a little closer to achieving our goal of becoming and maintaining metabolic health. Some of us will do this with our own research, the support of the low-carb community, additional education with resources like the Society of Metabolic Health Practitioners or the Nutrition Network, or even just by enjoying an episode of the Protecting Your Nest podcast. So I encourage you to continue making you your top priority so that you will be the best version of yourself, and I really believe if you do that, you'll have so much more to give to the people you love, to your colleagues, the people you work with, and your community as a whole. So I really thank you again for checking out this episode. And until we have another episode, be safe, be well, and continue to protect your nest.